Well, your last look. Rain's coming back tomorrow. Rain at noon and showers later in the day.
Okay.
So rain, rain, rain.
Okay. Now see, there's a Visa, the credit card.
I got you.
Visa,
Thanks a lot for explaining that, you guys.
Hopeless.
See you tomorrow night.
I'm talking about the Visa.
ABC News and Channel 2 News, recognized as the leader in television news. Tomorrow morning at 6, join Dan Christopher and Janice Weibel for Channel 2 News This Morning.
December 26th, 1994.
Reggie White.
The big hits. The bruising tackles.
Next thing I remember, 3 or 4 hours later, being in intensive care.
Controlled violence is what football's all about.
Don Beebe is out.
But it's also knocking a lot of players out of the game.
There are approximately 4 concussions per week in the NFL.
If I continue to subject myself to this kind of punishment, I may not be able to play with my kids when they're 10, 14, 20 years old and enjoy my family.
Tonight, football concussion.
And Brown goes down.
Is there a limit to the number of stars the game can lose?
This is ABC News Nightline. Substituting for Ted Koppel and reporting from Washington, Chris Wallace.
This week between Christmas and New Year's is a time for returning presents, for catching up with family, and for making resolutions about how next year will be different. But for many of us, it's also a time for settling down by the TV and watching one football game after another. And chances are that at some point this week, you will see a player knocked so senseless, you'll think he's in Tampa Bay instead of Green Bay, and that Calvin Coolidge is now president. Concussions are the hot topic in pro football these days. The technical definition is a jarring injury of the brain resulting in dysfunction. But one doctor described it this way recently. The brain is shaken in the cranium, much like Jell-O in a bowl. Among those who have suffered concussions this season, Dallas Cowboy Troy Aikman, the New York Giants' Dave Brown, and Chicago Bear Merrill Hodge, who retired from the game at age 29 after his second concussion in a few weeks. The NFL says it's taking the issue seriously, looking for ways to protect its players better. But as Nightline's Dave Marish reports, any attempt to make the game safer will run smack into the fans' taste for the big hit and the players' determination to play hurt.
Michael Husted will kick it off for the Buccaneers, and we're underway.
Just a few weeks ago, former NFL running back Merrill Hodge was pursuing his new career as a football broadcaster when he was overpowered by a rush of recent memories.
When you get knocked out, oftentimes it's been kind of a joking thing, and it's not a joking thing, and that's very serious. When you mess with your brain.
When it happened, it was kind of a shock like that in that, I've been in that situation just a little bit ago. I mean, that's what put me up in the booth so quick.
Hodge was feeling Brian Mitchell's pain for a particularly good reason. Just 7 weeks earlier, he'd been forced from the field, not to the bench, but to the couch at home with his wife, Tony. The reason for his premature retirement? Too many concussions. So when Mitchell returned to the game a few plays after the big hit, Hodge felt not just pain, but fear.
I don't agree with this. I mean, I'm not a medical chef, but Brian Mitchell was out. You could see he was out before he even hit the ground. And once you've done that, the brain has been affected. I don't think you let the kid play.
I know what Brian Mitchell is like. He's just like any other player in this league. You want to go back out on that field. Once you
Getting back onto the field is one of football's sacred mantras, a rule of conduct Hodge had learned before he got his first football concussion.
In high school, when I was a sophomore, I'd had one. And a kid who was playing with me, his dad was a coach in college, and I remember going to play the next week, and I remember him telling me, he goes, my dad says you're crazy for playing next week. And I'm like, crazy, man, I feel fine.
So Merrill Hodge played on through pain and the occasional ringing of bells in his head.
There's all kinds of dingers, standing 8 counts. I got a little buzz. I got my head dung. All of those, I guess, are forms of concussions. And if I went on to label all those or count all those up, I don't know. I probably couldn't keep track of all them.
Right now, it seems, in all the NFL, there's only one team, one doctor, keeping systematic track of concussions. Dr. Joseph Maroon of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Several years ago with the Steelers, we initiated a series of neurocognitive, or you might even call psychological, tests, which we administer to the players before the season. And these studies evaluate the athlete's ability to, first of all, recognize information, retain it, and then process the information.
After a player has taken a big hit, like Cowboys quarterback Troy Aikman drilled by the Cardinals' Wilbur Marshall, or Bills receiver Don Beebe left unconscious for minutes, these tests can yield a baseline of past performance, against which Steeler players, at least, can be measured, and by which big decisions can be made.
With the kinds of neurocognitive tests that we do, it's not a subjective opinion on my part telling Neil O'Donnell, I don't think you should play. Well, why don't you think I should play? Well, if we have a balance sheet relative to his brain function to say, Neil, this is your test results on your memory, your orientation, and your ability to perform rapid hand-eye movements. Do you think you're going to help the team by doing this?
Sometimes when a player is knocked out, like Jets quarterback Boomer Esiason, a chance at the playoffs is on the line. Sometimes, though, coming back too soon can be an even bigger risk.
There can be permanent changes, permanent decreases in mental function, decrements in functioning, especially after repeated concussion. Even if the concussions are spaced in time by months or longer, repeated concussions are known to lead to declines in functioning on neuropsychological test performances.
Like I say, the first 6 weeks was the worst period of my post-concussion era. And during that time, I was basically in bed in the dark.
For today's NFL players, Al Toon, once an emblem of all-pro ruggedness and grace at wide receiver for the New York Jets, is now the frightful emblem of what repeated concussions can do.
Short-term memory, sensitivity, irritability, photosensitivity. Sometimes I get headaches, and processing information, dizziness.
Well, I called Al Toon, and to be honest with you, Al Toon was just as if I would have talked to myself and recorded it and played it back.
Merrill kept talking about this fog. He's like, if I could just get out of this fog, I can't remember, and I feel so slow. And Al Toon kept talking about this, and he said, I never came out of the fog. So when I would say my prayers, it was like, please let him come out of the fog.
10 weeks after his last concussion, Merrill Hodge admits his fog hasn't completely lifted, nor has Al Toon's after more than a year. Still, players insist that rule changes can't protect them. Football, they say, is the big hit. But at the very least, better record keeping and more aggressive monitoring of standing 8 counts, bell ringers, and flat knockout concussions seem necessary if the NFL is to escape even worse tragedy. I'm Dave Marish for Nightline in Washington.
When we come back, a conversation we had shortly before tonight's game with the man who oversees player safety for the NFL, with ABC's play-by-play announcer for Monday Night Football, with an NFL Hall of Famer who has had many serious concussions, and with a sports neurologist who thinks changes have to be made in the game.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Buick.
Auto Show concept cars. Cars with exciting features like supercharged engines. Finally, someone's built one for you. Introducing the 1995 Riviera with an available supercharged engine that breathes deep for maximum power. It's amazing what a breath of fresh air can do. The all-new Riviera by Buick. What a concept.
I'm an eye doctor because I like to help people see better. LensCrafters does a great job in helping that happen. I always check for glaucoma and cataracts, and with 1 hour service, we can almost immediately see the results of our work. I enjoy the responsibility of seeing the same people year after year. They look at me as being their doctor. That's part of the good feeling you get when you do this type of work.
LensCrafters, helping people see better, 1 hour at a time. Most LensCrafters stores will be open New Year's Day.
The doctor told them they were having 5 babies and it could be dangerous, but they went ahead. Guess what? They had 6. Diane Sawyer, Turning Point Wednesday.
Are they gonna win?
Underneath the skin you see is the skin you want. Now uncover the skin you want with a free 8-day supply of Fruition. Millions of women have already seen up to 60% increase in clarity, up to 40% improvement in texture, up to 37% in smoothness. Fruition, the triple fruit acid complex from Estee Lauder. Don't wait. Come in for your free Fruition sample with a skincare profile, exclusively at Meyer & Frank.
On top of everything else you get in a Mercury Sable, it's nice to know you get to choose between a sedan or a wagon.
And now, for 10 days only, get your choice of savings with either 2.9% APR financing or $750 cash back. Sable offers front-wheel drive, dual airbags, V6 power, and speed control. But this offer can't last. Sedan or wagon, 2.9% APR financing or $750 cash back. Hurry in.
Mercury Sable at your Lincoln Mercury dealer now.
Football player who is now in charge of player safety for the NFL. Al Michaels is an ABC sports commentator and is the play-by-play announcer for Monday Night Football. From our Dallas affiliate, WFAA, Roger Staubach is an NFL Hall of Famer and a player who has suffered over 15 serious concussions during his career. And from our Washington studios, Dr. Peter Tesseris is a consulting neurologist for the New York Giants for the last 15 years. Mr. Washington, as I've been reading up on this subject today, one of the things that strikes me is that pro boxing, which is not a sport that's known for protecting its athletes, has more rules about when they can come back from a concussion than pro football does. Why is that?
Well, Chris, I think you're comparing apples and oranges. They're two very different sports. In boxing, if you think about boxing as a sport, the purpose, the main intent of boxing is to give your opponent a concussion. I mean, to deliver a blow to the head of the opponent. But in football, sometimes that happens, and that's the reason we're having this discussion. So I think it's very unfair to compare football to boxing.
But I guess what I'm asking, Mr. Washington, is in some states, for instance, after a knockout, a boxer can't go back into the ring for 30 days because the thought is that his brain needs protection. Don't football players need that same protection?
Football players certainly need as much protection as we can afford the players. But I think if you look at the data, and the work that's going on now relative to concussions, what you'll find is that there really isn't a universal agreement in terms of how long a player, particularly a football player, should be held out of a contest. We in the National Football League are looking forward to gaining as much data and as much information as we can relative to concussions. And I think the more information that comes out about concussions, the better we'll be able to decide those kinds of things. However, you have a situation in the National Football League where we have about 90 concussions a year. Of those 90 concussions, 94% of those concussions, the players return without missing a game. And in 4% of those situations, a player misses 1 game. So, you know, the talk about concussions, while we think it's valid, I think sometimes when you think in terms of the numbers, it might be a little exaggerated when you think in terms of the number of plays and players in the National Football League.
Dr. Tesseris, Mr. Washington points out that these players are coming back quickly. Does that indicate that the concussions aren't serious or that the NFL isn't dealing with it properly?
Well, I think that's an individual question in terms of the player involved with the concussion. It's a matter of how you evaluate the player and whether or not he responds quickly or poorly from such a brain trauma. You have to understand most of these concussions are minor brain injuries. They're diffuse. They don't result in any anatomical change in the brain that we could see by specific testing. And I think what the question really comes down to is, should we be making a better effort in evaluating the number of impacts each player has per game, and whether this should figure into the equation as to whether players should be told to change his style of play, or whether or not he should be coached better techniques in tackling if that's where the problem is.
Roger Staubach, back during your playing days, and as we said, you had 15 concussions. Do you think that you sometimes came back to the game too quickly, that you weren't paying enough attention to the effect of these head blows?
I think that I usually evaluate each one a little bit differently. The first one I had was in high school, and it was a weird feeling. All of a sudden you're in the game, and next thing you're on the team bus going back to the gym. And historically with the Cowboys, I think that the data they're compiling now to looking into it is correct. But the ones I had, you know, I had an orthopedic surgeon put 2 fingers in front of me, you know, well, Roger, you're okay now, once I was awake. So there wasn't really a concern for concussions. There's probably the same numbers. You know, I had my first one, Ray Nitschke knocked me out against the Green Bay Packers, and after the game, my wife asked about it, and I said, well, they just told me to go home, and she's, you know, Troy Aikman now, they're more concerned about Troy. Of course, my wife said he's better looking, they're more concerned, but, you know, I was getting maybe paid less, or whatever happens, they're more concerned today, so I think the data and the concern is very valid. But back when I was playing, it didn't seem like there was a big concern, but I was okay the next week. I mean, I was functioning, so I was able to play again.
Al Michaels, all this talk about concussions, is this just this season's pet injury, as knees were a few years ago, or is there a real problem here?
Both, Chris. It's the pet injury because so many high-profile quarterbacks have gotten concussions recently, including Troy Aikman and Jeff Hostetler. But it is something that needs to be addressed. And I think one of the reasons it has really come to the fore now, Chris, is the liberalization of rules this season. They've tried to enhance the passing game. Receivers are not allowed to be hit. Contact made with them past 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. Thus, how does a defense disrupt a passing game? They put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. That means a lot more blitzing, and blitzing means linebackers and defensive backs basically coming in unimpeded and getting clear shots at the quarterback. I talked to Don Shula recently, who's the head of the competition committee. Shula said this is the most important rules change the National Football League will have to address next season, protecting the quarterback.
Let me come at this, Al, with you in a different way. As Dave Marish noted in his report, only one team, the Steelers, currently monitors every player, gives them neurological testing, and there have been no studies on the long-term effects of concussions. Do you think the NFL is taking this seriously enough?
I think they are finally now, yes, Chris. And in fact, in a way, there has been sort of a tangential endorsement of hard hitting. What I mean by that is that the league and the media, and sometimes the league and the media in concert, have glamorized the hard hits. In fact, the National Football League has endorsed videos that are for sale. You know, call 1-800-SMACK-ME, and you can get a video of all of the hard hits in the National Football League. I think they now understand this is not something to be laughed at. This is something to be taken very seriously, and I think they will.
All right, I have to break in here, but when we return, I want to ask you all about ways, and you brought up some, Al. Ways, and you brought up some, Al Michaels, that players can be protected better, and also the suggestion that we return to the 1930s and have players put on leather helmets again. And we'll be back in a moment.
You get older, and your body starts to feel it. You get smarter, and you know the difference between pain relievers. That's why you get Bayer, the wonder drug, not Tylenol. Both relieve pain, but Bayer aspirin does something Tylenol can't. Only Bayer relieves the inflammation of arthritis when taken regularly. Just ask your doctor. You get older, you get smarter, you get Bayer.
This holiday season, while you're shopping, we'll be dropping a ton of money in the Discover Card Big Payback. Just use your card for a chance to win weekly bonus prizes and the ultimate $1 million grand prize. It pays to Discover, the card with the big payback.
At Volvo, we never cut corners. But who said you can't round them? The new 960 from Volvo, a Consumer's Digest Best Buy.
Next time, George McGovern talks for the first time about his daughter's death.
Also, top fashion figures and the year in health on Good Morning America.
Here on ABC.
Hey, you want to know a great place to buy a computer? Office Depot. They even have rules about computers. 1, sell only brand name computers from leading manufacturers. 2, sell the software and accessories to go with it. I want this. 3, back everything with a low price guarantee. Oh yeah, one more. Hire people who really know computers. Hey, it's their business to know.
Taking care of business.
Buy your computer where businesses buy theirs. Office Depot.
The all-new Subaru Legacy looks beautiful against a photographer's backdrop, but its true beauty is best seen against the elements. Subaru all-wheel drive is the ultimate safety feature. It reacts instantly, transferring power automatically from the wheels that slip to the wheels that grip. So you can safely weather even the worst of weather. The all-season, all-road, all-wheel drive Subaru Legacy. The beauty of all-wheel drive.
Who decided at what point that it was acceptable to fry a burger? This goes against millions of years of evolutionary instinct. I'm sorry, but burgers taste best cooked over an open flame. It's how the caveman did it. It's how Dad did it. That's how Burger King does it. I take the Whopper. Big hunk of beef cooked over actual fire for only 99 cents. Millions of years after the first burger, it's still only 99 cents. That's got to be pretty close to what it cost back then, right?
Burger King, get your burger's worth.
And we're back now with Gene Washington, Al Michaels, Roger Staubach, and Dr. Peter Tesseris. Dr. Troy Aikman, half kidding, said recently on Monday Night Football that maybe players should go back to wearing those leather helmets of the 30s and 40s. I understand you don't think that's such a bad idea.
Well, there are pros and cons to that. I think the players have to change their style of football, and that's very difficult to do with the evolving dynamic nature of the game as it is today. The players are bigger and stronger than they used to be. And that's going to be difficult to accept because you're setting your player up for more permanent injuries to the face and eyes and fracture of the maxillofacial bones when they're using leather helmets. So with the current helmet, I think it protects them much better than a leather helmet could in terms of permanent injuries.
But you know, Chris, I'd like to mention on the leather helmets, of course, I think the tracking of the concussions and being concerned about them, the MRIs, and really looking into it, I think that's very healthy. I think there's been a history of concussions that's maybe not any different than it is now. And they ought to know if it's off, if you're being bounced off the turf. Obviously, a leather helmet can be a disadvantage. So, how have the concussions taken place? And I had them all different kinds. I had a forearm behind the helmet by a dirty hit by a player to being bounced off the turf. So, I think they ought to continue to track the concussions as far as how they happen, and also to the extent that they've affected certain players, because the brain can be disrupted in a number of ways. So tracking them by how they happen and the degree they happen to a player, I think that's a very good step in the right direction.
Getting back to that issue, the whole problem is not the helmet as much as it is the force. And as you understand, force is mass times acceleration. And when somebody hits a player, whether they're wearing a leather helmet or a hard plastic helmet, is really has no bearing on the incidence of concussions as far as I'm concerned.
Al Michaels, you were talking about rules, and I'm not quite sure I followed you. How could the rules be changed to make the quarterbacks less vulnerable?
Well, among other things, I mean, there have been some flagrant hits in the National Football League. And again, this is so subjective, Chris, but clearly if the players were informed, look, if we see that you have made a flagrant hit, and we are going to not only penalize you and throw you out of the game, but we're going to dock you a week's pay. We're going to suspend you for a week. Now, what will that do? Well, some guys are going to suffer because this is going to be open to question, and there's going to be a lot of moaning and carrying on. But sooner or later, I think the defenders will now rush the quarterback, perhaps in a different manner. They won't be as wild about it, let's say. When I see somebody like a Kevin Green, the Steeler linebacker who leads the league in sacks, a good guy, a fun-loving guy who smiles a lot, gregarious with that flowing blonde mane, the kind of guy you like to be around off the field, say in an interview recently, as he did, you know what I love? An unimpeded shot at the quarterback, and to hear that squish when I hit him, that is scary. And that's the mentality of a lot of defensive players right now.
Gene Washington, let me ask you, will the NFL during this offseason, will they change the rules to give more protection to the players?
Well, Chris, I can't say for sure that there will be rule changes, although I anticipate they will. But in listening to Al, I just was reminded how difficult my job is when I mete out discipline for players who have flagrant hits on quarterbacks. Just what Al was talking about. The nature of the game has been for a long time, since I first started in 1969. One of the things was get to the quarterback. But I think what's happened, if you look at the change in the game, and if you look at the change in the quality of equipment, particularly helmets, we've done a good job in the equipment area. Al pointed out something that I think is very important. And that is, we need to change some attitudes about the game without changing the game itself, without violating the integrity of the game. And I think you can do that. And it sounds corny, but you can talk about sportsmanship. Willie Lanier, the great Hall of Fame linebacker, had head problems when he first started his career with Kansas City. Willie then put a sort of this little attachment on his helmet, which they later found out that didn't help. Actually, it was a little dangerous. But Willie changed his technique of playing, and he went on to have a great career as a Hall of Famer. So Willie is now talking about issues relative to technique, changing technique. And if Willie Lanier can do that and become a Hall of Famer, then I think a lot of our other football players can take that same advice.
But that technique should start in high school. They should start early on in the players' development in their football. They should be coaching proper technique, and non-teaching proper technique is also, to a skilled player, is also a factor. So I think that should start early on in the development of a football player.
Mr. Washington, we have a little over a minute left, and I'd like to just tick off a number of issues and ask you whether you think there might be changes or not in the off-season. One of the things Al Michaels mentioned, stiffer penalties for flagrant hits.
I believe so. As a matter of fact, I've raised the level of fines this year, and I'm going to ask that we start out next year at that level.
What about AstroTurf? A lot of people say that, it's just a rug on concrete, and it's so hard that it contributes to head injuries when the players hit the turf. Anything that can be done about that?
Well, there's ongoing discussions and a lot of work being done in that area. We're working with the Players Association, looking at all the fields in the NFL. The problem is the data is not conclusive. If it is, then certainly we'll do what's necessary.
And what about these extra padded bubble helmets that are thought to perhaps better protect players, but some of the players say they think it makes them look silly?
Well, not only how it looks, Chris, the problem is we don't know what happens when you put on that bubble helmet. For example, when they first started these things and they had the soft core on the top of the helmets, they found out that it was more dangerous for a player to have that type of helmet because of the torque problems. So we don't understand yet the full implications of having this extra helmet on top of a helmet, and we don't want to rush to say it's beneficial because let's realize that a lot of people will pay attention to what the NFL does. If we say this is good and positive, then every high school kid's going to go out and wear it. These things weigh almost a pound each, and you have to look at the implications of just having more weight on your head.
Gene Washington, we're going to have to leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. And I'll be back in a moment.
What they do is simple. So simple it would be easy to miss it altogether. But they're making a difference. You see, drunk driving fatalities are down 32% in the last 10 years. And fatalities from teen drunk driving are down 60%. So to everyone who checks an ID, offers to call a cab, or helps a customer know when to say when, we extend our thanks. By doing what's right, you are making things better. A message from Budweiser.
January 29th, after the Super Bowl, stay tuned for the biggest TV event of the year.
You've won $10 million.
Watch Publishers Clearinghouse surprise this year's $10 million winner live as it's happening. Enter now and it could be you.
It's tough finding glasses that fit perfectly. So LensCrafters invented a new measuring system called AccuFit that measures the size of your face.
10, I'll remember that.
The size is clearly marked on the frame, so you'll know which one is right for you. Only LensCrafters has AccuFit. We're able to get the correct size the first time and satisfy the customer with the best quality glasses.
It's a nice fit.
That's what we do here.
LensCrafters, helping people see better, 1 hour at a time. Most LensCrafters stores will be open New Year's Day.
Some cars you can talk about. Some cars you can read about. And some cars you simply have to experience. The new 960 from Volvo.
Don't fight it. It's time to get out your pencil and check your list because Mervyn's After Christmas sale has just begun. At Mervyn's, you'll find great savings throughout the store. It's the perfect place to get those gifts that Santa somehow forgot. Hey, no one's perfect. All Hager slacks for men. All sprockets for kids. All denim jeans. So read your list, check it twice, and hurry down to Mervyn's After Christmas sale. It runs through Saturday only.
And right now, save 50% on all Christmas wrap and trim at Mervyn's After Christmas clearance.
See your local Jeep and Eagle dealer.
Tomorrow on World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, the American Agenda takes a look at the fastest growing career in America, providing home care for the elderly. And that's our report for tonight. I'm Chris Wallace in Washington.